All right, we're live. We're going to be talking about some podcast research about how effective podcasts are at actually selling stuff,
Right.
and some content categorization things, and also aliens somehow.
You always surprise me, Andrew.
It's been a lot going on. I know we were catching up a little bit before this, but I think that one of the things that caught my eye this week was Oxford Road, which I don't know anything about, put a top 15 podcasts by ad performance list out. They did some other research associated with that too, but the idea behind it was interesting in that they're looking at, it's the age old question of, if you sell an ad, does it work? How do you know people buy it? And they figured out a
Yeah.
way to measure that. And then they ranked podcasts by best performance. And I thought it was really interesting. I sent it to you. I hadn't heard of,
hmm
I don't think, any of them. Here I am. I'm
Yeah,
like a
it was
podcaster building software for podcasting. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this is.
the world is big, right? There are a few of them that there are a few of them that I noticed I've heard of, but I didn't quite categorize them in my own head as like podcasts, which I thought was interesting. So it's a mix of different types of categories in this top
Yeah.
15, right?
And I would say, like, the caveat is, like, most of the podcasts on this list, like, they're not the big names that you've heard of. And I guess I don't want to plug them, but I guess this is the
Yeah,
list that they, and again, I've never really heard of these folks. I am not endorsing this, but I thought it was like an interesting premise. And I think it's an interesting thing to chat about. So the top one they have listed is Critical Role,
hmm
followed by the David Pakman Show,
hmm
the Megyn Kelly Show, Monday Morning Podcast, Lenny's Podcast, Product Career Growth, Unsubscribed Podcast, Explain It to Me, the Bulwark Podcast, if I got that right, Lore, Strictly Scrutiny, and then, some other ones.
Yeah,
But
it's a
to your
top 10.
point, I clicked through them, read the descriptions, read, some of the episode titles to get a little bit familiar with them. I've heard of Megyn Kelly. She used to be a Fox host, right? She got,
Right.
I think, famously fired after one of the Republican debate performances. She criticized
hmm
Trump and then got fired, and maybe it was correlated or not. So I heard about her, and then there's a couple other folks on here that I don't know, and I wouldn't say I follow, but they're like, I guess, famous people,
hmm
for
Yeah,
lack
yeah.
of a better category.
Now it's
That I
a
was like, oh
catch
yeah,
22.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like
are
Bill
they famous?
Burr's podcast is on. He's a comedian. I
hmm
can't say I'm a fan. I've heard him. I thought it was to your point, I thought it was pretty interesting to see that they're not what I would consider like podcasts. They're like
Podcast.
famous people talking in
Yeah,
audio or video form.
yeah. It's very reminiscent of, at least for a lot of these, even in the titles, the X show, right? Whoever's show, it's late night. You just have someone leading a show,
Yep.
bringing on people, talking to them. Maybe they're just skit monologue thing. It's interesting to see how the art form has evolved.
What's interesting too, because it reminds me of like kind of daytime TV where you have the Maury
Yeah,
Povich show for
yeah,
old, right?
yeah,
And that was kind of like, I guess they were talk shows. They were
yeah. In
loosely
a different
scripted.
form,
Like
right?
there was in there, I think,
hmm
famously, and then Howard Stern had a radio show that became a TV show and followed that format. And I guess
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
wondering, like, for most people, are podcasts just like the daytime talk show that doesn't? I don't know. Maybe they exist. I
That
don't really
doesn't fit
watch
in the
TV.
daytime. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The evolution of the daytime talk show. Yeah. I mean, it's also interesting. This list is the top 15 that actually sell stuff, right? So, like
according to them.
yeah, according to whatever report this
Yeah,
is, right? But the integration of advertising or marketing into entertainment, I think, is also a highlight here, where even though the technology itself is evolved and changing, it's more ingrained with ads, maybe. Although I guess you could say back when we had TVs or when people used to watch TV, they used to run ads. But the whole broadcasting dynamic has changed with the
yep,
internet. So it's very interesting to see how that's playing out and I guess creeping into what we call quote unquote podcasts now.
yeah. And I know, like, for the longest time, making podcasts profitable or measurable has been very
hmm
difficult, and how do you track a listen? So most of the time it's just by downloads. You don't know if people are actually listening. Some podcast players will track you, and they have audience engagement or audience tracking capability. So it to try to put some more teeth behind that, I think it's interesting because the podcast industry in general is growing. The amount of money flowing in is growing. It's mostly advertising deals, and I'm going to count sponsorships as those too. So if a lot of podcasters or YouTubers or whatever,
content creators,
social platform people
yeah.
will get sponsored by a company, and I'm cool with that if they disclose it, but a lot of times they don't, or it's not obviously disclosed. But it's also a way for them to make money. It feels like it's becoming much more entertainment focused and not so much like information. Like the news segment's a little weird. I like the presidential election here in the States. There was I think a big acknowledgement from a lot of folks that what they call new media or podcasts can play a huge role in spreading the word of the campaign, or not spreading the word of the campaign if you didn't show up on the podcast.
Yeah.
And how legacy media or old media, the news, the newspaper, that kind of stuff is less relevant to young folks, but also I think less impactful overall. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think social media is still probably far more prevalent, but the podcasts definitely have a following and people watch them, apparently, assuming. Yeah. So it's funny to me that we replaced TV with just like on-demand video.
On-demand people talking.
What a lot of podcasting is.
Yeah. The call you made about the entertainment level of podcasts and its evolution, I think is also interesting because I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, and it's been like a slow change, but it used to be like you listen to podcasts for edutainment purposes, like you're learning about something specifically. So like a low production documentary or something like that, or next level journalism or something. And now it's more like just people jumping on videos and talking to other people about random things.
Us?
Like us. Only we're not famous.
I know, right? I agree. And it reminds me of the early days of the internet too, right? Where you had a high barrier to get in, so you had to want to be in it. And then it was a lot of nerdy people talking about nerdy stuff that they found interesting. Yeah. And then as more and more people came on, I would say it got worse and worse. And now everything is gated behind communities. Everything's trying to sell you ads to make money. And podcasting just feels like it's just become like a populist enterprise. And I feel like, I guess maybe at this point, a populist enterprise in the United States or in the capitalist world just becomes this. I think there's still niches around that are interesting, and some of those on that list, people are probably screaming, how do you not know?
How do you not know XYZ? Yeah.
If it comes to entertainment or pop culture, there's a high probability I don't know. I try very, very hard to stay out of the news. You got a pretty major event needs to happen for me to figure it out in real time, at least. Like I'll reading news weekly, which is maybe something to talk about. But I think the edutainment thing then becomes money factor, becomes ways for people to try to invest and make money. The ad thing too is again, this podcast is not ad supported and no plans for that. And it works just fine.
It works versus makes money, I think, are two different questions. But yeah.
But is the purpose of your podcast to entertain, inform, or is it to make money? And I feel like when you start putting in a bunch of ad dollars, then you start thinking about the content in terms of we need a hook to keep people into 10-minute 10 so that we can read the ad. And if we lose them, then we read the ad. And that becomes much more of like the strategic context of what you're doing. And then it becomes directly correlated to the product. And now everyone needs to start fitting that format. And that's something like I found with our format. It's anti-algorithm in that we don't have a singular focus that we talk about constantly, which is bad for discovery. It's bad for the algorithm. I don't care. That's what I want to produce.
Yeah.
I just don't like the leveling of populism,
Hmm.
because you lose what I think is the interesting stuff, because diversity provides, what is it, necessity? Is that the phrase? But diversity produces things that are unforeseen.
Sure.
Whereas when you start putting money behind it and starting to measure everything, you get categories, and then it's, oh, you can't be relevant in this space because you're not a beauty influencer, but I
Yeah,
can
you're
have
not.
someone
Yeah,
on the
you're not in the
podcast who knows
box.
about cosmetics, and I can ask them intelligent questions and learn about it and spread that information. But that content will probably never reach the people who are interested in that because I'm not in this predefined niche. And,
Yeah.
and it comes back to this problem of discovery that I keep bringing up.
Yeah, in fairness, this isn't a problem strictly to podcasts. I think music is probably one of the earliest domains that have this issue where you have
Mm-hmm.
music discovery is inhibited by what we call genres. So someone who's interested in X genre would be interested in another song in the X genre. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But then you
Mm-hmm.
have something like pop, which sort of by definition you can't be in the category unless you have a certain type of
Yeah,
je ne sais quoi, right?
I don't disagree, but I think the mechanism of discovery for music has, in modern time, been better. So I think it used to be like music was defined as like orchestral, and then people started breaking out, and you get different kind of categories of like jazz and um, gypsy and all this kind of other stuff, and it's the same instruments producing the sound. Stringed instruments start to get popular. You get kind of folk and bluegrass, and then someone amplifies it, and you get rock and roll, and then that becomes really popular for whatever reason. A lot of money gets thrown into it in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But at the same time, the accessibility of that industry dropped as well, because industrialized instruments became relatively affordable. Like guitars weren't
Sure.
five, six
Yeah.
thousand
Yeah.
dollars, violins weren't 2 years' wages,
Hmm.
and more people could experiment, and then you could see them perform. You could have friends who did it, and there was an indirect social network at play. You could go to the record store once the record technology became prominent, and then you could find people who are really into that industry, I guess, music,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure.
in ways that most people probably wouldn't be, and then you could discover. The problem with like modern stuff, and podcasting is this way as well, and we've talked a lot about it, is that the algorithm doesn't lend to that same experience. Because if I were to
Hmm.
walk into a record store, and most record stores today are also still pretty good like this, that you can walk in and there'll probably be someone working who knows something about some weird, obscure thing that you're interested
Sure.
in, and they can recommend more or give you a resource to go find it, right? They'll know enough about.
Like a library and a librarian, right? Like
Yeah,
someone who is
it's the
well
same
knowledgeable
exact,
enough. Sure. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's the same exact principle as like a librarian, and come
Right.
in and say, these are the authors I'm interested in, or these are the topics I'm interested in. If they don't know offhand, they can go to the catalog. They can help you navigate that catalog to try to find they're studied in the art and science of the industry, the field, whatever you want to call it, but then also the process in which the information is disseminated and cataloged.
Hmm.
Music genres, book themes, book
Yeah.
topics, categories, authors, that kind of stuff. The algorithm doesn't really seem to be like that. For me, it's like it it heavily depends on you to initiate. So you search for something, right? That's what everyone does now. And then it hopefully gives you what you want. Theoretically, it'll find that for you. But then it stops. It'll, like YouTube, Spotify, Apple, they'll all these recommendation engines, and they'll recommend stuff, but it almost always is popular stuff, right? It's going to
Yeah.
recommend you the most popular things. You've been brought into a category, and it's going to just assume you really like that. And maybe you do really like that. That's great. But you'll never get exposed to the Beatles if you're only going in and looking for Elvis. But you might
Yeah.
really like both. And so that's the prevailing concern that I keep bringing up, is that the algorithms are great in that it can find stuff and it can recommend stuff, but we've lost that very human chaos element that actually breeds diversity in information of whatever we're talking about. And then I think that does a disservice to everybody in our culture. And I
Yeah.
think our culture dies because you lose the ability for people to express, and then you lose the ability for people to discover. And I think the ability to discover is pretty much broken. Like, you can find people in your own weird little niche, but your weird little niche doesn't get exposed to anyone else's weird little niche unless they're adjacent. And that would naturally happen anyway. You're always in the punk rock section at the record store. You're going to find somebody who's into like free jazz or something like that, right? You're like, oh, that's cool. It's not really my thing. I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it boxes and separates us so much.
I think you're onto something, and I need to get fact checked on this, but I think it was Spotify, but this idea of music DNA, where they were very proud of developing this new way of determining like to like, or something you may like based off of something else, and they
Yep.
tagged it like music DNA, right? I
I
feel
think
like
you're right on that.
yeah, yeah, you might be onto something here, where we just haven't applied that sort of thinking to other domains like movies, books, or what have you. It's not so much of what type of book, what type of movie it
Yeah.
is, but instead these elements of noir, or like the lighting style, or something more granular that we haven't quite identified yet. And with the capability of compute that we have now, we might be able to. So it's interesting to explore.
I was thinking about this a little bit this week too. And what scares me is I've coming to the conclusion that I think most people don't want to explore or discover.
Hmm. Yeah,
And I don't,
I buy that actually.
yeah,
It's change. It's something new. Many people don't like change. Many people don't like new
right.
things. Yeah.
And my question that I never really got to the answer to this week, at least, tune in next week.
And every week after that.
Like and subscribe, smash the like button. The thing that I didn't quite reconcile was, has it always been that way? Or have the algorithmification of society, really just broken that? Because I feel like discovery, creativity, all those things are pretty cyclical in history. When there's abundance, people are more into trying new stuff. When there isn't abundance or you're starving, you don't really have the time and energy to care about new things, so you don't.
Yeah.
But we've never lived in a time of more abundance. Like, I know the political news and the cycle and all this is depressing for a lot of people, but the reality is the world's never been better for most people.
Yeah.
And yet I see less and less and less new and interesting stuff. And I know that there's new and interesting stuff happening. And I've come across a couple of platforms recently where they've been doing a pretty good job of exposing me to stuff that I wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to. But it's still a pretty limited niche group of folks that are on those.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people confuse discovery of like new and novel stuff with like lack of information about something else of another topic, and they get exposed to something that anyone in that category would probably know about or be interested in, but then they themselves don't know, and so then they think that it's novel and new, which I'm not trying to like shame anyone, but it's also, that's not my point. My point is trying to think of an example of something from this week that I learned that I didn't know about before. Oh, aliens.
You didn't know they existed?
I intentionally led with aliens. There's some asteroid. I should probably have the facts of the asteroid name, but there's some interstellar asteroid it's entering our solar system, and it's gonna cross by Earth's path at some point in the near future in space time. And it's super weird. Just
the asteroid or
the
the asteroid itself? Okay.
Yeah, so the trajectory is weird. They think it's a comet, but the comet doesn't really make sense. The tail's all screwy. They're starting to get, because it's getting closer, they're starting to get spectral analysis, and the spectral analysis doesn't really match things that make any sense. And I think it's headed like directly towards the sun, which is also weird. And there's a Reddit community that I was reading something that was totally unrelated to Reddit. And I'm like hesitant to give the platform because I don't want it to get destroyed by everybody going there and talking about all their stupid shit.
You want to be
I
you
want
want to
it
be the cool
mine.
underground guy. Yeah.
I want it mine. Um, oh, it's actually not open to the public yet. It's in beta.
Oh,
I
okay.
say
I
that,
know. I know what you're
I
talking
think you
about
probably know what
now.
it is. Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah, it's in closed beta. It'll be open to people in the future, and then it'll get ruined like everything else. But it was just so like the article. There's a guy at Harvard. I've talked about this on the podcast before.
The guy at Harvard or
Yeah.
this topic? Oh, okay.
The topic. Yeah.
So you really like this guy at Harvard?
No, there's some guy at Harvard who like he thinks it's an alien spaceship or some stupid thing, and he's published papers. And if you actually read it got picked up a while ago by the conservative media as Harvard professor says aliens are coming. But if you actually read the paper's very clear, and it's not. We basically just did that for clickbait. And the reality is this is a weird thing that we should study more. I agree with it's a weird thing. What I found interesting, I was reading an article about it, and I don't know if this is real or not, so don't take my word for it, but there were mass amounts of nickel coming out of this thing, allegedly, which is weird because comets, as far as I understand, don't really produce tons amount of nickel.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird. And there's a couple other elements that they mentioned in this article, and they were just talking about how weird this thing was. And so I was like, okay. So I start Googling it. I find, of course, Reddit has this whole big thing on whatever asteroid, comet, interstellar object this is. And I started to read about it, and it just goes off the walls very quickly about people claiming it's some lost civilization, it's future human. I mean, it's all the same kind of shit. Sure. Whatever. Honestly, I don't think it's aliens. I think it's probably just some weird asteroid or comet. I've pissed off everyone now. But what I thought was really interesting was like, okay, nickel's a weird element to be emitting. And so I Googled what heavy or what, I don't remember what I Googled something around like nickel. I was like, what produces large amounts of nickel? Apparently fusion.
Oh, as a byproduct?
Yeah, I think it's nickel 40. Don't quote me, but and I was like, that's strange. And so then I was thinking about it, and then I was digging a little bit deeper, and I found some more like threads from people being like, this is clearly fusion propulsion system, and they're refueling in the sun. And I find this stuff really interesting because it is so creative. To conjecture these these ideas, stories and ideas about what has to clearly be this. If you don't give reasoning, you're crazy. If you give reasoning and it doesn't match what other people think, you're still crazy. But I find it more interesting because you're like,
you're crazy regardless. Sure.
Yeah. But I was like, oh wow, this is actually fascinating because there's some pretty smart people in there giving some pretty good evidence of it. It's probably cold fusion because blah 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 blah. And I'm like, all right, maybe. And then everyone else is conjecturing it's obviously aliens. So I was like, well, that's interesting because, well, no, and like my skepticism of aliens went down like 1% after reading into this for like.
So what's it at now?
I think I'm at like 2%.
Okay.
Yeah. And then a lot of people get out of it by saying that it's probably not aliens, but it's probably an alien spacecraft.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I won't give the odds on alien spacecraft.
Interesting.
But anyway, I was like, so I was thinking about it, and I was like, the only two logical, I think there's three logical conclusions. One, all of this information is wrong. The data is wrong.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how do they know that it's nickel? Yeah. How they confirmed
it's
it?
And it's allegedly producing radio pulses in predictable ways. It's
what instruments they're using to measure.
Yeah, it'll accelerate and decelerate. And so, that sounds like a controlled spacecraft or something. But the reality is probably just a bad measurement or some sort of echoing or something. There's all sorts of really well understood reasons of this kind of stuff that happens. And I love to see like a picture of it, and it's like 100 light years away or whatever. This is like little fuzzy blob. It's not 100 light years away, but I think it's out past Jupiter or something. So it's millions of miles away, and it's this grainy pixelated photo. And people make it sound like I have my like iPhone and I'm taking a picture of something across the room, and it's like super detailed and really obvious. And it's like, come on, folks, like we're working with very non-precise things, and it's really cool that we can even see this thing coming. Like, I think the science on this shit's really cool, which is the only reason I'm bringing it up. And I want to have an astrophysicist or a physicist on. So if anybody knows one, email the podcast.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to, like, maybe nickel whatever is like super common in comets, and just nobody bothered to like actually look at it. I think it's just a really fascinating object. And so the three reasons would be: one, alien spacecraft, it's real, look out. Two, the instrumentation and data that we're getting from this thing millions of miles away is faulty or wrong, or it is exactly what it looks like. And it's just some really strange comet thing that has a perfectly logical, rational explanation as to why it's doing it. We just haven't observed it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think those are the three primary. Yeah.
But you learn, okay. So try to tie it back in. You learn this. Why did you do
discovery? It was
okay. Yeah. Okay. So
that's the kind of shit that I'm like, I would never go looking for that. I wouldn't know to look for it, frankly. I did read a thing about it a few months ago. Like I said, we talked about it on the podcast. I think it was Dimitri and I were chatting, and I was like, what are you talking about? Alien spacecraft. So I was like, wow, there's this really interesting. And then I promptly forgot about it. On with life. And then I was on this platform, I was looking at stuff, and it had recommended this article, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually weird.
Yeah.
I want more of that. I want to be really clear. I don't want, there's so much
conspiracy theory
bullshit in that. Like, I'm interested in it a tiny bit because I think it's hilarious, but this is a real thing that is out there that we know that it is real. We don't really know why. Like, there's a lot of scientists have, I think, postulated option 3, which is, it's just a weird thing that
something. Yeah.
We just don't quite know why it's doing what it's doing yet. And as it gets closer, we'll see. And I guess if this thing makes like a right turn, then we know there's something really screwy going on. But, and I would just, the alien thing, probabilistically, we're not alone in the universe, but if there is other intelligent life, are they really flying in their space car to
towards
Earth,
the sun?
Right? Come on, folks. Like, if you have the technology to do that, you're not going to be traveling by yourself, right? You're sending some autonomous probe, probably, or you've figured out bending physics, and in which case you're probably not interested in us at all.
Yeah.
Because we are like the ants in your world. When was the last time you went and tried to talk to an ant?
Yeah. Bringing it back to this idea of discovery, I do think there's something about the, I don't want to say ignorance, but ignorance. Like, when we didn't have the access to the internet and knowledge all at our fingertips, you were none the wiser, right? So like, the discovery thing was, whatever was new to you was because you didn't know about it before, and that was because you didn't have access to the internet. But strangely enough, as we've had the access that we do have now, I feel like a lot of people maybe a little bit more selective in terms of what they even care about anymore, or because it's there and it's been there for a long time, they just don't care as much. And I think this goes back to the idea of curiosity. Is like the awe of the kind of state that we live in in terms of technology and the quality of life is really amazing compared to even 20 years ago. But it's become so normalized that people don't seem to be affected by it as much.
A couple of things. One, it's called Comet 3I/Atlas.
Okay.
Yep.
It's got a name. It's official.
NASA. This isn't. A lot of people write this off as a conspiracy. The thing exists. It is not a conspiracy. People conjecturing that it's aliens is a conspiracy.
Yeah. The conspiracy theory is what it is. Right.
Mm-hmm. And in the definition of the word alien, it is truly alien, because I believe it's
not
the first interstellar. Well, and it's also the first interstellar object that we've observed entering our solar system, I think. Again, if you're a physicist or know one, let me know. I want to talk to someone who actually knows about this, because I think it's really interesting. But to your point, maybe you just had to seek it out, or I guess thinking about growing up and how I have a diverse set of interests and know tons of people across all sorts of crazy things, that to me is just normal. I guess most people don't know people all over fields in the world and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe I'm just like, wow, the world isn't like me. I don't know. But I also think that the discovery of stuff did happen through the traditional means. So like the newspaper would have an opinion column that someone would write about something that you didn't know. Your local social network would talk about stuff that, you had to be more intentional about the diversity of your group. But at the same time, I guess, going to church, everybody in the town
Sure.
segregates
Yeah.
through church somehow. So you're brought together with people who share your religion or your denomination of religion, but also probably nothing else. Like you don't have a
Mm.
lot of, so you get exposed to things that way as well. And I think I feel like it is much more prevalent in the past than it is today. To your point, though, that you said something about information prevalence or relevance, I think we've also never been bombarded with so much
Yeah.
information that most people are effectively tuning out.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. And it saddens me because it's never been easier to find stuff and to do things, but it's also never been harder in some regards.
Yeah.
And it saddens me that people just have stopped trying.
Hmm. That's deeply profound.
It's a good spot to leave it.